This is Jamie Drummond with Good Food Revolution. I'm here with winemaker Peter Franus. How are you today,
I'm
Peter?
great, Jamie. Good to see you again.
It's been a long time. We're here to look at the current releases from the Peter Franus range and to find out from Peter what's been going on in Napa since the last time we spoke.
There's a lot of suffering going on in Napa because of the economic recession, and I think Napa in particular is being challenged just because of its pricing, which has tended to be a little bit on the high side, and given the conditions, obviously the economic conditions around the world, there's a lot of pressure on that pricing. So you're actually seeing some people adjusting, and the $60, $80, $90 Cabernets I think are having trouble.
Now, did you have to make any price adjustments yourself?
Well, we've always tried to present ourselves as good value, fair value, and our wines have never been, we want to be in the upper tier in terms of quality, but our pricing hopefully has always delivered value, so our pricing has generally been on the lower side. I mean, not low, but relative to, I think, a lot of the other expensive wines. Yeah. So we've fared, I think, a little bit better during this period.
Have you felt that your wines have changed much since the last time we spoke, your winemaking style, perhaps?
We've only gotten better, of course. I think, I've been doing this, I've been in Napa since 1980. Unfortunately, I have the title now of veteran winemaker. I thought the day would never come. But I think we've kind of fallen into a style over the last 10 or 15 years, fairly consistent.
Well, let's taste through what you have on offer today. What's the first wine that you'd like to taste?
We have a Carneros Sauvignon Blanc. It's actually from a vineyard called Stewart Vineyard in Carneros. It was planted for me, and the first crop was 1999. If you want to go ahead and you want me to pour.
There we go. Whoa, we almost dropped the pencil there.
So this is 2009 Carneros Sauvignon Blanc. Was it 9 or 2008?
What can you tell me about this one?
Well, it's what's primarily called a Muscat clone, so it's not as herbaceous as a lot of Sauvignon Blancs. It's a little more tropical, a little more minerally. And the way we make it, we ferment it in tank at a cold temperature to preserve the aromatics and freshness. And then we put it in old puncheons or old barrels for about 3 months for a little sur-lie, which adds a little richness and creaminess.
Are you utilizing much batonnage there?
Definitely during the sur-lie period. Yeah, but these are old, so we're not imparting any new oak to. We don't want the oak to overwhelm the wine.
And do you use cultured yeasts for this?
We do.
Yeah, I can detect a certain aromatic on it.
Well, we actually select the yeast precisely for its ability to heighten the aromatics and the floral components. We drink a lot of this ourselves, I must admit.
And what do you normally consume this with? Because I know you're a food lover, so how do you go with this?
The obvious shellfish, of course, fish. I love making a clam pasta, and I often have this wine with that.
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good acidity, some good richness, though. But again, not overly herbaceous or grassy.
This is very pleasant. Now, moving swiftly on, we have...
Swiftly.
We have the Franus Napa Valley Albarino.
The very first.
Now, this is exciting. I'd heard of this wine, but have never tasted it as of yet.
This, I used to share a winery with a fellow Michael Havens Wine Cellars. And he was actually the first person in the States to release an Albarino.
Okay.
And this comes from the same vineyard as the Sauvignon Blanc, Stewart Vineyard. And the vineyard was, the first release was 1999. It wasn't actually the very first vineyard. Coupe apparently had the first grapes.
Okay.
But this was the first commercial release. And the cuttings came from Spain. I'm not exactly sure which vineyards.
Now, Anne was your wife was mentioning that you enjoy a fair bit of Spanish food, so I would guess that this would have come.
Well, we have very fond memories of being in Costa Brava,
right?
Sitting under the canopy, having baby calamari, little olive oil and garlic, and drinking Albarino and some of the Spanish rosés, so we have a real fondness for this. Brings back fond memories as well.
Now, how would you say Albarino performs in Napa as opposed to perhaps Southern California, where I've tried it from before?
Well, it's in Carneros, so again, cooler. They always talk about kind of the sea element or the salt element
Yes,
of Albarino, and apparently in Galicia, it's very close to the ocean. And the Stewart Vineyard in Carneros, curiously enough, is surrounded by, the Napa River comes into the bay.
Yes.
So it's actually surrounded by water, and a levee protects the vineyard. I also get, in addition to Sauvignon Blanc and the Albarino, I get Merlot from here as well. So it's a very interesting site.
Certainly a richer style for Albarino. I don't think I've ever tasted one with quite this kind of fatness on the palate. I mean, the acidity's there to sort of back that up.
We actually picked it relatively early for a California white, it's around 22.5 sugar. So the alcohol is under 14. Again, good acidity, but does have some richness, which I think also comes from the surly aging as well.
There's a lovely texture on the palate with this one, so this is a lovely wine.
It's nice being one of the very few being produced in the States as well. So it evokes a lot of curiosity and interest.
I think I've only tasted around. I think I've tasted some coupe before, and also Randall Graham makes some.
Okay, I haven't had that one.
Yeah, which is very interesting. Okay,
all
so
right.
Next we're on to a very beautifully colored wine. I cannot seem to recall tasting rosé from you before.
Never.
Right,
Very
okay.
first, another first from Peter Franus. These grapes are from a spectacular vineyard up in Lake County.
Now, where is Lake County?
Lake County is directly north of Napa Valley.
Okay.
And as the crow flies, the vineyard's probably about 12 miles north of Calistoga. So it's kind of at the corner of Sonoma County and Napa County. And it's in an area called Cobb Mountain.
Yes.
3,000 feet elevation. So really one of the highest vineyards in California. And there was some excess fruit in 2009 of Syrah Grenache. So we said, why not a rosé? And there are a lot of what I call them imposters on the market, rosés, which are saignés,
yes.
i.e. people, in order to concentrate the juice in a tank that they're going to ferment, they drain off some of the juice, and it's called saignée. But typically the juice is very high in sugar, so the wines that are produced from that saignée are typically high in alcohol and a little clumsy. But we made this in a true rosé fashion. We picked the grapes earlier and treated them like a white wine. So the grapes, 50% Grenache, 50 Syrah, went into the press, and we did a white wine press cycle on it.
So you don't really get that much skin contact in this case.
No, but enough to give it this color. So the Syrah is a very deeply colored wine, or deeply colored grape. So we got just the amount of color we want. I don't like that dark pink. I like the lighter, I think often called salmon colored. And again, this has only been in the bottle for about a month.
It's a nice bitterness and tannic quality at the back of the palate that I really enjoy.
It's refreshing. I mean, there's a lot. I think that a little bit of astringency, a little black pepper.
That's what I enjoy on it.
Yeah.
I think it actually has that little bit of grip on it.
Right.
Is lacking from so many rosé. There is actually structure there, which is lovely.
We'll be drinking a lot of this over the next 6 months too.
Now, did you make much of this?
Oh, only 200 cases.
Okay, so you'll be consuming most of it.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
exactly.
Yeah. So do you see lots of experimentation in Napa? I mean, is Cabernet sort of outpriced itself right now, or is all the best land still planted to Cabernet?
Cabernet certainly is the most
been a
highly
big
touted
thing?
grape in Napa. And I mean, I've been in Napa 30 years, so I've seen the cycles. Cabernet a few years ago, you couldn't find any. It was the easiest to sell. So all of a sudden, people planted more Cabernet.
Right.
And now it's a very glutted market. And, the best Cabernets are still some of the best Cabernets coming out of California. But it's a tough, competitive market. So in response, people are looking at other varieties. So there are little niches appearing. The Albarino, for example, is a niche. We're looking at budding over some vineyard in, it would be the Big Ranch Road area, to some Chenin, Chenin Blanc. I mean, a few years ago, you couldn't give away Chenin Blanc.
Yes, yeah.
But now, I mean, we wouldn't do a huge amount, but 300 or 400 cases. And again, people are looking for other alternatives and just other varieties other than the usual suspects.
The cyclical nature of fashion when it comes to, well, everything, but grape varietals is quite interesting when you think of how much Chenin was uprooted, and I have heard of some quite serious replantings recently, actually. So
there's a whole. I just saw there's a group in southern, either San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, devoting their entire vineyard to aromatic whites, obscure varieties.
Interesting. Like which kind of varietals?
I can't remember which ones they were talking about. Spanish varieties. Again, more Albarino. I can't remember off the top of my head. But again, varieties that are not, common currently in California.
We're speaking about the Syrah, this being 50% Syrah. There was quite a glut of Syrah as well, wasn't there? Because everybody sort of planted to Syrah, and then it didn't really seem to take off in the way that people had imagined.
They thought it was going to be the goal or the solution to all the problems.
Yes,
The Spectator did a huge article on it, and for whatever reasons, it never took. And I think it's unfortunate. Same thing happened to Merlot a bit. That when Merlot and Syrah are excellent, I think they embody the very things that people like about wine: juicy, lush, not hard or astringent. But there's just this psychology that people are turned off by Syrah and Merlot. Merlot is actually on the comeback in the States, whereas Syrah is still one of the hardest wines to sell.
Do you feel that's because there was just too much mediocre Syrah? Or perhaps Syrah was planted where it shouldn't be planted and overcropped?
I don't know, honestly. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of mediocre Chardonnay, but Chardonnay still kind of sold.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even the highly touted Syrahs with big scores and big points are difficult to sell.
Now, how have you found your export market? How have you found your various markets?
Especially our Canadian market.
Oh, good.
We're doing very well here. Ontario and Quebec are probably in our top 5 or 6 markets.
That's great. So you don't feel as if the bloom's off the rose with regards to Californian wine on the world stage right now?
As long as it's priced correctly.
Right.
I think it's very, again, we're in the UK, and very competitive market, and I think very sensitive to pricing. So expensive California wines are going to have a tough time over there. And there's the thing about the UK is there's a lot of mediocre California wine, so the perception is California wine isn't very good, so it's a bit of a catch-22. And I think the challenge is to get more top quality California wine into the UK. So the perception changes that yes, indeed, there are wonderful wines coming, and so we're taking that challenge and see what we can do.
Excellent. Now let's move on to the reds here. So we're on to
speaking of Cabernet. Here we are.
Speaking of Cabernet, this is your.
It's our 2006, and it comes from 2 vineyards. One called Rancho Chimiles, which is in the southeast corner of Napa Valley. It's an area called Woodin Valley. The vines are about 20 years old, and impeccably managed vineyard. He does a wonderful job. Sells to people like Paul Meyer and Stag's Leap Wine Cellars.
Yes.
So very top grower. And the other vineyard is Truchard Vineyard in Carneros. Also a wonderful grower. So the style of the Cabernet from each of the vineyards is very different. The Rancho is more muscular, lower acid, more tannin, whereas the Truchard is more acid, less tannin, more floral. So it's a nice match. And this also has about 10% Cabernet Franc in it as well from Truchard.
And I can remember the last time we spoke, we spent some time discussing oak regimes and the like. Have you changed the way that you treat these wines?
No, my philosophy is, the greatest wines in the world can support 100% new oak. Very few can do that. For me, it's always a matter of the oak balancing the wine, and I like new oak in my wines, but I just don't want them to overpower. So I adjust my percentage of new oak relative to how the wine supports it. So the Zinfandels typically are in that 30%, 40% range, whereas my Napa Valley Red, my high-end proprietary, can be as much as 80%.
80%.
But I never want people to notice, oh, I taste the oak, or at that point I think it dominates the wine, or it's too much. So it's all about integration and balance.
Now, where is the wood sourced from, and where is it coopered?
For the Zinfandels, it's all French. Actually, all the wines we're tasting here today, all French oak.
Okay.
For my Zins, I typically go toward the Burgundian coopers.
Right. Okay.
So the same barrels that are used for Pinot and Chardonnay, and then for the Bordeaux Reds, I go to the Bordeaux coopers. So I have some favorites. I'm probably using 4 or 5 different coopers right now.
And what kind of toast level do you prefer for this kind of wine?
You're asking a lot of technical questions.
I'm just interested, you know?
Typically, we go for medium plus.
Right, okay.
But
you think that the fruit, you feel the fruit can support that
absolutely
toast level, right?
Yeah. And I think some people even go to a higher toast, what I call a sucker bet, because it becomes very pronounced and it makes a big impact on the wine. A lot of people like that or respond to it.
Yeah, there's a certain palate that really enjoys that. I think this is wonderfully balanced. This is quite
balance is for me what it's all about. That's my style is I'm not to knock you out or knock you over the head. I would rather have you come back for another sip and another sip, and hopefully discover something else. For me, it's about complexity.
Undoubtedly, there's a certain amount. This is quite a muscular wine, but it does have quite a marvelous balance to it. Quite a great structure as well.
Thank you. I like restraint. I think a lot of California wines can be over the top, and so I like to have some restraint in my wines.
Now, I always find this an interesting question to ask winemakers. How do you feel about wine journalists and scores and the like? And how do they treat
we love them. We love them.
You do? Do they love you?
They do. We generally do very well with the press, but and it's helped us. I mean, it gets you some exposure certainly, but we want people buying the wine on the basis of the wine, not because it's gotten a score. You may, if you chase the scores, you may end up with a wine that you don't like.
Yes,
so we want people responding to the wine. And our greatest, what's helped build our business over the years is word of mouth, and people feeling part of the family, that in many cases they get to know us or taste with us, or we do a lot of winemaker dinners, and they feel that connection and they tell other people.
Yes.
So that's really how we've built our business. We could spend another 2 or 3 hours on wine journalists, but again, they can give you some exposure where get you in front of people that might not have heard of you before or have picked up a bottle of wine. So in that regard, it's good. But I think it's difficult to build a business on reviews and the journalists because it's fickle. I mean, you never know how they're going to respond to you. The next time. So I think it's important to, again, build your business on not utilizing that or putting a lot of emphasis on it.
Let's move on to the next wine here.
Okay.
So I'm rushing you along here.
Oh no. This is our first proprietary Bordeaux blend, 2005, and you may call it our big gun to go up against the other big guns at what we think is a much more reasonable price. And
this actually has your signature.
Yes, it does.
So.
Yeah, so it's extra special.
Thank you.
This is a 20-barrel selection I made, kind of at my whim, putting it together. And there's variation from barrel to barrel. So the idea for this wine was to pick what I thought were the 20 best barrels to go into this. So it's the equivalent of 500 cases, not a huge production. But again, people looking for something a little extra special to go up against the opuses and the insignias and the dominuses. And this is our entry into that category. So it's about 80% Cabernet Sauvignon, 10 Franc, and 10 Merlot. And we won't do it every year, just in what we think are the best finishes.
It's very, very, very fine tannins on this. This is quite a treat on the palate, actually.
It's interesting, when I put it together, I thought it was going to be a lusher wine. not that that was the intent, but when the blend came together, it kind of leaned itself out and calmed down, and it actually took a longer period to evolve. The blending tightened it up, and when we first released it, it was a very quiet wine. And I mean, it's 2005, so it's 5 years old now, and I think it's really starting to show nicely, which to me is an indication that it should age well too.
I mean, the tannins are certainly assertive, but there's a fineness going on there. A finesse, sorry.
Exactly.
Well, Bucky could use both, actually.
Fine tannins and finesse.
Wow. What kind of age worthiness do you put this then to?
You know, sometimes it surprises you. I mean, it is 5 years old now, and as I say, it tightened up. I'm thinking easily another 5 to 10.
And
so,
the fruit from this is being sourced from similar vineyards?
Similar vineyards, it's a different cepage, different blend. And again, picking barrels that I thought were a little more exciting. Because you do, even in the same lot of wine, barrel to barrel, there's variation. Interesting how you get that variation.
This really is quite good. Yeah,
Quite.
I enjoy that.
I thought in Scotland when you said quite, it meant not too good.
Well, I learned that from my brother-in-law. He's a wine journalist also.
When you say you're quite pretty,
good,
you're not really that pretty.
You're smart.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
smart. No, it's something I've actually adopted from my brother-in-law, Chris Walters, who uses quite good in that sense, but it's actually very good. So, but
All
you're
right.
correct.
Yeah. This is quite good, though.
Okay.
All right, now we come to
Fine.
arguably the flagship in the lineup. A special package, we call it the black tie version.
Right.
And this is our 2007 Bramlin Vineyard Zinfandel.
Okay.
This is an 85-year-old vineyard on Mount Veeder that I've worked with since 1991. So this will actually be the 20th vintage for me coming out of Bramlin. I guess we'll have to do a special package or something, don't you think? And this is a 10-acre vineyard planted in the 20s.
Thank you. All bush vine?
Yes, goblet, bush vines, no trellising, no wire, non-irrigated. So in all this time, they've just relied on the natural rainfall. And for me, it's a privilege to work with a vineyard, a spectacular vineyard. And what also makes this interesting, it's an old field blend, how they used to plant in the old days.
Yes.
It's roughly 90% Zin, and then the remaining 8 to 10% are Mourvedre, Charbonneau, and Carignan. So, really interesting blend and on a spectacular site. It's about 1,200 feet elevation above the valley floor.
How is Zinfandel in sort of current wine world, current economic situation, everything that's going on, and the new normal and all of that? How is Zinfandel performing as a varietal within California?
It's very it's regional. Our distributor in Southern California is telling me that Zin is becoming a harder sell there. Although
In Southern California,
right,
interesting.
it doesn't seem to have affected us, so hopefully we're immune. And again, I think different parts of the country, Zin is a hotter item. Do very well in Arizona, very well in Ohio. So it depends kind of on the area. Some areas gravitate more toward the cab, whereas others are more interested in the Zin.
I have seen, just as an observer, have seen in many markets that I've been privy to, a bit of a pull away from these sort of bigger styles of wine. And I have to say, I've always been a big fan of a well-made, intense Zinfandel. I've told you this before, and to the point that I actually attended 2 of the ZAP conferences, and you would think after tasting that number of Zinfandels,
Congratulations.
you'd be put off for life. But I have seen a little bit of a pull away from some of these bigger styles of Zinfandels, and one of the criticisms that I've heard leveled against many of these higher alcohol Zinfandels is people don't find them that food friendly. Where would you place a wine like this? Because we're up into 15.6% alcohol.
Well, it's interesting because
Where would you place that at the dinner table?
Zinfandel is often becomes the whipping boy for high alcohol. And honestly, a lot of Chardonnays and Cabernets in California are just as high or higher. And for me, again, it's how the balance of the wine.
Yes.
I mean, typically, people don't say, oh God, it's high in alcohol. If they see a number, then there's a preconception that the wine, oh my God, it's too high in alcohol. If I pour this wine for people and ask them their alcohol impression, typically it is not, oh God, it's high in alcohol. So again, for me, it's the overall impression of the wine. You can have a wine with lower alcohol that the wine does not support it. It will come across as more alcoholic. I mean, obviously, this is a substantial wine that needs some substantial food. So, braised short ribs, something with substance. So, I find this will go with food as well as, your other Bordeaux blends or Merlots or Cabernets. I get a little sensitive about the alcohol issue because we get beaten up, I think, a bit too much for it. I mean, I had an Italian Gewürz not that long ago. It was over 15% alcohol.
Where was that coming from?
Oh, I can't remember. It's been a while. But, it was northern Italy.
Was it balanced?
I mean, I could sense it was higher in alcohol, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Right. And I didn't say, oh my God, I don't like this wine because it's high in alcohol. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand in California and, reduce alcohols, I would. But for me, it's the overall impression of the wine. I don't like to get tied up in the numbers, whether it's pH or TA or the alcohol. You just taste the wine and give me your feedback.
So when it comes to technology and the application of shall we say, technology that has come about in the wine world over the last 15 years, how do you utilize any of that technology?
I'm kind of a hands-off. I see technology as mostly remedial, correcting problems, which can be useful. But for me, if you have tannin issues, tannin issue to me is you're growing the grapes in the wrong area.
Yes.
So it starts in the vineyard. If you give me high-quality, excellent fruit, I can generally make an excellent wine.
Now, for our viewers and our listeners, when you talk about tannin management after the fact, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, things like microoxygenation, adding wood chips. Fortunately, I've not had to deal with that because, again, I think I'm working with some of the top vineyards.
Right.
So in the old days, in my early career, I think, too much tannin was more of an issue. Now, I've never really, I can't remember the last time somebody said, oh God, this is a tannic wine. So I feel fortunate in that sense that, I'm dealing with good vineyards.
And what about technologies such as reverse osmosis for reducing alcohol in wine and the like?
It's a useful tool. And again, I'm sort of a non-manipulator. I don't like to manipulate the wine. I feel my job is to kind of guide the grapes and not do a lot of, again, manipulation. I think there are a lot of what I call technically sound wines out there that don't have a lot of soul and personality. And technically, everything looks good, and they're okay, maybe a little boring. I mean, for me, the exciting wines are the ones that are kind of on the edge. And sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they don't. But I think that's for me, that's where the interest is. And I use Kermit Lynch wines as, I look at his portfolio, always interesting wines. Sometimes they don't hit it, but when they do, I think they're top notch. So that's the area where, I'd like to think my wines are in, or the wines I like to enjoy.
With that in mind, would you class yourself as a winemaker in the kind of UC Davis mold, or a winemaker in the kind of, shall we say, out there southwestern French mold?
I like to think I'm out there.
Okay.
I went to UC Berkeley, so I'm out
there.
Okay,
so slightly
during the late '60s, so I'm definitely out there. It's much more intuitive now, and how I feel about things. I do things like bottle. I bottled my '99 Brandlin and my 2005 Brandlin on Valentine's Day for my wife. I didn't bottle it under the moon or whatever, but so I do pay attention to that kind of thing. So.
Now, are you much of a cook yourself? Because I know you're a food lover.
I love to cook.
You do. Now, I have a question for you because I was thinking about this scene from.
Oh, it's not a trick question.
No, not trick questions. I was in a wonderful Portuguese butchery yesterday, and my colleague pointed out that there were these beautiful beef shanks, and they were huge. They're about 2 inches thick, and I've never actually cooked beef shanks before.
Neither have I.
They're huge, with a huge big bone full of marrow in the centre. And so I was going to ask you if you knew how to cook them.
I do not.
I think I'm going to be stewing them this afternoon.
For a very long time.
Yeah, a very long time.
I think this wine would go well with it.
I was imagining so. I have some root vegetables to use up. Not the most sort of spring summery of dishes, but I'm sure it will. A wine like this would work admirably alongside that.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I have a lot of people come and visit and say, "Oh, I don't like Zinfandel," and I pour this wine for them. And if you like wine, I think you'll love this wine. So.
Now, if people were looking to find out a little bit more about your wines, you have quite an active website.
FranusWine.com.
FranusWine.com.
Or you can Google Peter Franus, it'll show up, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for spending
Always
some
a
time with us
pleasure.
today. I look forward to coming to see you in California at some point. I've been promising that for a couple of years.
Likewise, and I look forward to a return visit.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Peter.